Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a double buffed Pokemon that genuinely I did not have high expectations for, but after using it, I was thoroughly impressed, and that is Shadow Dusknoir. Shadow Dusknoir got 2 buffs this season. HEX now generates more energy and does more damage, and at long last it gets access to a coverage move, the newly buffed Dynamic Punch, to hit back against dark and normal types. So pairing up a new coverage move with really fast pacing, Shadow Dusknoir can take a lot of people by surprise. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we pick up a positive lead, Shadow Steelix into Lapras. I do want to check and see if they have something that Dusknoir does not want to deal with in the back, so I'm going to switch out when they make it to the Sparkling Aria and catch it onto Golisopod. Golisopod was also a complete revelation on the safe switch. Golisopod, Aqua Jet got a big buff this season. Like, look at that. That is a pretty cheap move, and it does so much damage. So the opponent is going to go for the foul play, pick up the KO, but I can bring back in the Steelix and fire off the Breaking Swipe 2 turns before they're able to make it to their next foul play. In the back is going to be Clodsire, and now I get to send in Shadow Dusknoir. Shadow Dusknoir, you can tell right off the bat with HEX, this thing, it doesn't do a lot of fast move damage, but it gets the charge attacks very quickly. In comes Lapras, and Lapras is about to get absolutely crushed by Dynamic Punch after Dynamic Punch. Shadow Dusknoir exerting so much pressure in this matchup. The Psywaves are hitting for neutral damage, so Dusknoir is beginning to feel the effects of this fast move pressure, but Dusknoir is just going to go straight for Dynamic Punch number 3. This is going to be picking up the KO onto Lapras. In comes Clodsire, and I have a guaranteed win condition here by banking energy and sending in Steelix. I know Steelix is healthy enough that 1 Earthquake is not going to knock me out, and I'm just going to get to apply a bunch of debuffs. So even though Shadow Punch normally doesn't do a lot of damage in the Clodsire matchup, after I debuff them a bunch, it's going to do quite a lot. And at this point, the opponent realizes there is no way to win, so they will concede the match. Shadow Steelix versus Clodsire, bad lead, but I have 2 better responses in the back. Save switch Golisopod, out comes a Malamar, and this trainer is core broken by Golisopod. Straight for the X Scissor, that's a 1-hit KO. Opponent hoping I was on Aerial Ace, but I really think the X Scissor Aqua Jet moveset is going to be a lot more consistent. Aqua Jet connects, and Golisopod, it's received so many buffs over time, and it feels really good to use right now. Due to this increased pacing, it also now beats Diggersby in the 0s and 1s, even though it's a Shadow Claw user. So that's part of the reason why it can core nicely with Steelix. And now I can send in Shadow Dusknoir. Shadow Dusknoir, more than happy to take the 1 HEX advantage at the expense of a shield. In the back is Pangoro. Now Pangoro should break a Steel plus Ghost Core, right? Wrong, because we now have Shadow Dusknoir with Dynamic Punch. Dusknoir able to tank a Night Slash. They're really going to struggle to Karate Chop down here. The opponent is going to fire off another Night Slash. They are 2 off of a 3rd Night Slash, but I can perfectly overfarm, fire off the Dynamic Punch. Dynamic Punch is going to be knocking out Pangoro. In comes Clodsire. Clodsire tries for the farm down, but I have a very high ranked Shadow Dusknoir, so I can hang on, pick up the knockout with the Shadow Punch, and take the win. Shadow Steelix versus Grumpig. I am going to be switching out of here. Steelix can do pretty well there since it does have a Psywave resist, but I'd rather send in the Golisopod because I have 2 stronger answers in the back. X Scissor connects, that is a ton of damage, but my opponent is now going to send out Morpeko. They took a lot of damage on the Grumpig, but they did so to set up Morpeko, and now Morpeko is going to be a little uncomfortable to deal with. The good news, however, is Morpeko is a very predictable Pokemon. Every time it throws a move, the typing of its Aura Wheel changes. So I just shield the Dark-type Aura Wheel, and now, even though they're +2, they're stuck throwing a Psychic Fangs or an Electric Aura Wheel, which is very okay by me. They're going to fire off energy. I'm never going to shield because I know Steelix is not threatened in any way. They go for the Psychic Fangs. I can now go for a Breaking Swipe. That's a nice catch by the opponent, able to preserve the Morpeko, but in doing so, they actually gave up their boost. They shield, and then I end up catching their Dynamic Punch onto Dusknoir. So, unfortunately, things rapidly going downhill for my opponent. In the back is going to be Superior. Honestly, I'm not sure what charge moves to go for here. It looks like probably Shadow Punch into Dynamic Punch would be better. I opted to just go for the double Shadow Punch, and HEX it's basically a clone of current rollout. So HEX is going to be pretty nice in terms of energy generation, but it's not going to do a ton of fast move pressure. I'm going to shield up the Aura Wheel and switch into the Steelix. Steelix is going to get a nice Thunderfang farm down, and Superior, it just can't get to enough charge attacks to win the game, so we get to take the win with a Breaking Swipe. Steelix into Azumarill. Now this is a pretty okay lead for the Steelix, but again, I would rather try and catch out of this if I can, because I would rather take the Ice Beam on Golisopod where it is going to be resisted. Golisopod, very comfortable taking a resisted Ice Beam. Out comes Alolan Sand Slash. I am shocked to see this here, but I guess they just don't have a good response to Golisopod. Aqua Jet does huge damage now. Again, I know this is a Dusknoir feature, but Golisopod honestly did amazingly as well. They go for the drill run. It does not KO, and I make it to another Aqua Jet, and my opponent is actually going to commit the shield. So they want to try and make a move versus the Steelix. However, I can just throw the Breaking Swipe. This is before they're able to get the drill run, and Breaking Swipe will be able to pick up the KO. In comes Azumarill. I send out Shadow Dusknoir. In the back is Sableye, and this is not what I was hoping to see. They're running double Shadow Claw. But even so, Shadow Dusknoir is able to output quite a lot of pressure here, grabbing the shield, making it to another Shadow Punch, getting that Sableye deep into the red. Sableye exits with a lot of energy. I'm pretty sure that Sableye's charge attacks will do more than an Ice Beam from Azumarill, just because it is the Shadow Sableye, and Sableye has a lot higher base attack. So they're going to throw the foul play. They switch out into Azumarill, and I make a crucial error. To me, visually, it looked like they got one turn, so I threw on 3, but they didn't, and I end up giving them a free bubble. That is a huge misplay on my part. Ice Beam is going to land. I will make it to the Psychic Fangs, but I am very, very low. I wouldn't be this low if I didn't give them a free bubble, and this game that should have been a win ends in a tie due to a timing error by me. Picking up a good lead in the next match, Shadow Steelix versus Talonflame. I always prefer to be the Steelix in this matchup. Steelix has a really nice pacing advantage, and you can always throw very comfortably on good timing. So the Psychic Fangs is going to land. They undertap. Anytime they undertap, they almost always have Flame Charge, but I can just shield once, farm down, and exit with a charge attack loaded. So it ends up working out pretty nicely for Steelix. They send in Malamar. Malamar is a bit uncomfortable. I'm going to Breaking Swipe here, fish for a debuff. I get the debuff, and then look to send in Golisopod. Golisopod, they're throwing energy, which is great for me, because Foul Play does less damage this season, and they're debuffed. So I'm able to tank that very comfortably. Here, I went for the Aqua Jet, anticipating a switch out by the opponent, and they don't end up switching out. Instead, they end up staying and shielding. So here, I think I can still take this next one because of the Breaking Swipe debuff, and I make another Aqua Jet. Again, I'm just covering for a catch here because Water is a better offensive typing than Bug, and now Malamar is going to be met with the star of the show, Shadow Dusknoir. I'm going to be shielding up on the Dusknoir. Let's see what they have in the back. They have Superior, and I'm going to go for the Shadow Punch. I'm strongly debating waiting a turn and then switching into the Steelix here, but I decide against it, and the moment that I didn't, I immediately regret it because that's exactly when they throw. Frenzy does huge damage. Dusknoir barely hanging on. Shadow Punch is going to get them low, but I'm able to send in the Steelix, and Steelix, thanks to the residual energy that I banked earlier, is going to make it to a Psychic Fangs. That KOs, in comes the Malamar. Malamar gets farmed down, and that wasn't the cleanest game by me, but we're able to get the win. Shadow Steelix versus Shadow Alolan Sandslash. I'm going to save switch into Golisopod, and my opponent is staying in. I mean, they really should not be staying in here. This is a terrible matchup for them. Golisopod going to do great here. My opponent is going to fire off energy, and everything they throw will be resisted, so I'm fine letting this go. It is going to be the Ice Punch. I'm able to get a CMP tie here. Aqua Jet is going to be shielded. That's a strange shield to me because this does not KO, so I let it go. But the moment I let it go, I realize the team that I'm playing against, and I realize that I have made a fatal error. This is double Mud Slap. The reason they stayed in is because they were triple weak to Golisopod. So I absolutely should have shielded their second move even if it was resisted, because Golisopod would have had an incredible amount of value into their team. But instead, unfortunately, I don't preserve the Golisopod, and that's going to cost me because there should be a Gastrodon greeting me here momentarily, and there is. Now, because of that, I just failed to read the team. I was assuming that this team was dead because it's a new season, but it's not, and now I'm in trouble. I get to land another Shadow Punch, but I'm going to need to go for a catch. They're 2 off. I'm going to predict the overfarm, go for a switch, but they're very patient. They're able to hold on to their energy. Gastrodon gets the farm down, and it all comes down to this. Can I survive the Earth Power? It's going to be close. Steelix cannot hang on. And a very winnable game. Unfortunately, I just completely threw. Shadow Steelix versus Shadow Dusknoir. A scary lead. I'm going to save switch to Golisopod. Opponent banks a ton of energy. And now is going to send out Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff will take a lot of damage from Aqua Jet. Of course, my Shadow Claws do absolutely nothing here, but my goodness, did the Aqua Jets add up. I wonder if the Aqua Jets will allow me to Shadow Claw down. It's going to be very close here. Golisopod, oh, just cannot survive the charm. By my count, they're on 7, which means unless they get damage registration error, which they do not get their Icy Wind. I'm going to farm up now with the Steelix, switch into Dusknoir. Please tell me, Dynamic Punch catch. We got it. Double resisted catch. Devastation for my opponent. In the back, they have Dugong. I'm going to farm up a ton of energy. I'm baiting because Dugongs love to shield the first, but my opponent realizes they're in trouble and makes a great bait call. So now I'm on a little bit of the back foot here because my opponent did end up no shielding. I farm up to a Shadow Punch plus a Dynamic Punch. They end up calling a bait again. I can send in the Steelix, and the opponent will resign the match. Shadow Steelix versus Malamar. Not the most comfortable lead ever for the Steelix. I'm going to look to farm up 10 and then send in Golisopod. And oh my goodness, they threw instantly. Please tell me we caught the superpower, and we did. People not being as careful with when they throw their charge attacks, and that's definitely allowing me to get the upper hand in some matchups, catching moves that normally I would not be able to catch. Aerial Ace is going to do a ton of damage to Golisopod, but baiting this out is really good. Obviously, Dusknoir wants no part of a Mandibuzz. I'm going to fire off Aqua Jet after Aqua Jet in this matchup, just looking to try and get the Mandibuzz low. Mandibuzz now rapidly approaching the red health. I can send in the Steelix. Opponent throws on alignment just to get some damage off, but I am very okay taking this damage in exchange for a farm down and leaving with 100 energy, because I know Steelix energy can go everywhere. In comes the Malamar. Malamar does have a lot of energy banked, so I'm going to shield up the foul play and now fire off the Breaking Swipe. This will not be able to knock out, but it will do quite a lot of damage, and now I can fire off another Breaking Swipe, and now I can just Psychic Fangs whatever they have in the back. In the back, it's a Alolan Marowak, and I click the wrong move. All I have to do to win this game is click Psychic Fangs, and it's a guaranteed win, but I misclick the move, and it's gonna cost me. Oh man, that was the unfortunate thing about this team. Every single game that I lost, I felt that I only lost because I misplayed. I felt that I'd play in every single game that I played, which is very nice, because Steelix is gonna come agonizingly close to farming down. So if I just debuff the defense with a Psychic Fangs, it was an incredibly easy win. So the only person I can blame for that loss is myself. My goodness. Okay, Steelix versus Lapras. Very nice lead for the Steelix. Opponent is going to save switch out into a Wigglytuff, and this is actually a pretty big error by my opponent. Ideally, even if you're core broken with a Lapras Wigglytuff core into a Steelix, Lapras is going to be the one that puts up the better fight here. I'm going to go for an undercharge because they're going to make a move anyway, so I would rather exit with energy. But if they stayed in with the Lapras, Wigglytuff would have done quite well into my backline. Granted, I would have gone for a catch onto the Golisopod to bait it out. It is going to be Drapion. I get to bank energy since I'm debuffed and send in Golisopod. Golisopod going to be met with a Crunch. Crunch does significant damage. In comes the Lapras, and I will immediately fire off the X-Scissor. This straight 5 pacing on both moves for Golisopod is quite nice. Golisopod, like Dusknoir, felt really, really nice to use. Lapras goes for the Sparkling Aria. That's going to pick up the knockout. I'm going to send in Dusknoir, and I just want to bank a bunch of energy on the Dusknoir before I eventually switch into the Steelix. Opponent goes for the harder hitting Ice Beam, and that's my time to strike, sending in the Steelix, getting the farm down, and now this Drapion is just going to get overwhelmed by Breaking Swipe after Breaking Swipe. They shield the first, but now I can just fire off the second. And they know, basically, no matter what they do, there's no way to win this game. Even if they no shielded the first, they would have had to shield the second because it does too much damage. I'm able to get to a third. I have a move loaded on the DUSKNOIR as well. So unfortunately for my opponent, there's just no way out here. A Shadow Punch will knock out the Drapion from this health range, but for fun, let's make it to the Dynamic Punch. So Dynamic Punch into the Drapion is going to take that game. All in all, DUSKNOIR and Golisopod feel really, really nice to use. I think they're very strong anti-meta Pokemon that you can get wins with. Like, I paired it up with a strong Pokemon from the previous season, Steelix, and it felt great to use. DUSKNOIR is really interesting in that it's a ghost type, but it does not necessarily struggle as much with darks and normals like most typical ghost types would because of that Dynamic Punch coverage. Obviously, something like a Mandibuzz, not going to be a fun Pokemon because it only takes neutral from the Dynamic Punch, but even the game where we were going up against Pangoro, DUSKNOIR honestly felt fine there. Night Slash does a lot, but they're not able to farm down, and you're still able to dish out some serious pain in return. So I think Shadow DUSKNOIR is finally in a very playable spot, which is not something I think I would ever say. Like, I know I tested it after the Astonish buff, and I said, man, this thing really needs a coverage move. And not only did it get a coverage move, but it got increased pacing as well. So now it is very fast to get the charge attacks. So they've really wanted to make DUSKNOIR good. Obviously, the buff to Shadow Punch and the buff to Astonish. And now they're saying Astonish wasn't even enough. We're going to buff HEX, and we're going to give it Dynamic Punch, and well, I think they've finally done it. I think Shadow DUSKNOIR is a very playable, strong anti-meta Pokemon that can catch a lot of people off guard because in these early season days, people are not going to be familiar with how fast this thing gets the charge attacks. One of the reasons I wanted to play it was I played against it, and I was shocked by how fast it was. I played against an Astonished DUSKNOIR, and honestly, I didn't think it was all that. But with HEX, the pacing on this thing is very, very cool. The thing you have to keep in mind, of course, is the fact that you're not going to have a lot of fast move pressure with HEX, as HEX is a clone of the newly nerfed rollout. But man, this thing spams out charge attacks with lightning efficiency. And finally, about Golisopod, I think Golisopod is now very playable anti-meta as well. Golisopod, its pacing straight 5 to both moves feels great. We know Shadow Claw is terrific, and I'm very excited to play more of Golisopod throughout the course of the season because the Aqua Jet rework and finally not having to farm up to 6 for water damage is a huge win. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.